Imagine the vast Atlantic Ocean stretching endlessly in every direction. The horizon blurs where the sky meets the sea, and beneath the surface, something ancient stirs, powerful, silent, and waiting. The sun glints off the waves as the wind carries the scent of salt and freedom. But what begins as a calm voyage can, in the blink of an eye, transform into a nightmare. This is not just a survival story. It's a descent into raw terror, into a test of human will against the most primal forces of nature. This is the story of Deborah Scaling Kiley and Brad Kavanaugh, two sailors who endured 5 days lost at sea, surrounded by great white sharks, facing death at every moment. Back in 1982, Deborah Kiley wasn't new to the ocean. At just 25 years old, she had already achieved what many professional sailors only dreamed of. The year before, she had made history as the first American woman to complete the grueling 40,000-mile Whitbread round-the-world yacht race, one of the most dangerous sailing competitions on Earth. Known for her grit and navigational brilliance, she had carved a place for herself in a world dominated by men, where storms, solitude, and near-death experiences were routine. Sailing jobs came one after another. So when the opportunity came to help deliver a yacht called the Trashman from Maine to Florida, she took it without hesitation. It was supposed to be a quick, easy passage, one of many she had taken in her career. The vessel, 58 feet long, was to be handed off to its new owners in Florida. The rest of the crew consisted of Captain John Lippeth, a man older and less disciplined than Deborah had hoped, her friend Brad Kavanaugh, a young man with a thirst for adventure, and two less experienced sailors, Meg Mooney and Mark Adams. Spirits were high when they set out, the water was calm, and the first day passed like a dream, laughter, drinks, the sun warming their backs as they sailed southward. But nature has no sympathy for confidence. The weather began to shift on the second day. The wind whispered warnings through the sails as clouds formed in the distance, heavy and dark. The crew noted it, but no one could predict the scale of what was about to hit them. Then, almost without warning, the ocean turned violent. A ferocious storm crashed down upon them with 70-mile-per-hour gusts and waves towering over 50 feet high. It wasn't just a storm, it was a monstrous force determined to swallow them whole. The Trashman was no match. The captain, reportedly drunk and asleep when the chaos began, was jolted awake only after the crew screamed for help. By then it was too late. Water flooded the cabin, ripping through their supplies, their gear, their hope. The yacht began to break apart. In the chaos, Mark managed to deploy a small inflatable dinghy, a flimsy raft barely suitable for calm waters, let alone a shark-infested nightmare. One by one, the crew jumped into the ocean, clinging to life, swimming for that small beacon of survival. As they kicked through the black water, they felt things brushing their legs. At first, they assumed it was each other, until Brad looked down and saw the truth. Great white sharks, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, circling just beneath the surface. It was a miracle any of them made it onto the raft at all. But even as they huddled together, drenched, freezing, and in shock, the sharks did not leave. Their fins sliced through the water ominously, just feet away, testing the raft's edges. Then came the realization that sealed their fate. Meg had been injured during the storm. Her leg, deep with wounds, was bleeding into the sea. And the blood was drawing the sharks closer, making them bolder. One of the sharks bit the line tethered to the raft and began dragging them. Others began ramming the rubber walls, testing for weakness. The crew was defenseless. They had no oars, no food, barely any water. The sun blazed down during the day, scorching their exposed skin, while the nights brought a deep, bone-chilling cold. They were lost in the middle of nowhere, with no land in sight, no rescue expected, and nowhere to run. Deborah understood something in those first hours that many in her place wouldn't. She knew she had to let go of fear and think moment by moment. Her survival training took over. She wrapped herself in seaweed for warmth, breathed slowly to fight off panic, and prayed for time, for strength, and for the will to keep going. But others were not so lucky. Meg's injuries worsened quickly. Infection set in and her condition deteriorated. Meanwhile, the little water they had was running out. Desperate, the captain and Mark began to drink seawater, even as Deborah pleaded with them not to. She knew what would happen. And she was right. The saltwater poisoned their minds. John began to hallucinate, convinced he could see land. Without warning, he threw himself overboard. His cries echoed into silence, cut short as the ocean swallowed him whole. No one needed to say it, everyone knew what had happened. The sharks had taken him. Soon after, Mark lost touch with reality. Muttering nonsense about going to a store to buy cigarettes, he too leapt into the sea. Deborah could only watch in horror as the sharks ripped him apart. It was something she would never forget. The sound, the sight, the helplessness. Meg died slowly. Blood poisoning claimed her by the fourth night. There was no drama, no final words, just the quiet slipping away of someone who had fought as long as she could. Her body, lifeless and bleeding, made the floor of the raft a macabre pool of blood, pus, and seaweed. The smell was overwhelming. The risk too great. With broken hearts, Deborah and Brad made the decision to let her go. Carefully, they removed her jewelry, hoping to return it to her family one day. They whispered prayers and gently pushed her body into the sea, watching the sharks close in. The raft had become a coffin. The stench, the memories, the loss, it all clung to them like a second skin. Brad, exhausted and weak, collapsed while cleaning the raft. His body slipped over the edge and into the water. Deborah, with everything she had left, reached for him, screamed and pulled, but it wasn't enough. He couldn't climb back in. The sharks were circling. And then, like a sign from the heavens, a ship appeared on the horizon. A cargo vessel, massive and looming, moving toward them. Brad, pushed by adrenaline and desperation, found one last surge of strength and hauled himself back onto the raft. They waved, screamed, signaled. And against all odds, the ship saw them. Rescue came swiftly. Food, water, warmth, safety. They had drifted over 90 miles from their original course. No search had ever been mounted. A false signal had mistakenly indicated the trashman had arrived safely. They had been forgotten, left for dead. But they survived. The experience haunted them. Deborah struggled for years with the memories of her friends being eaten alive. The ocean, once a place of joy and adventure, now held shadows she could never erase. Brad described life afterward as a never-ending survival mode, always on edge, even on solid ground. Eventually, Deborah turned her pain into purpose. She became an author, a speaker, a voice for those who had faced the unthinkable. Brad returned to the sea, unwilling to surrender the part of him that had always belonged there. And yet, even after all these years, some still doubt the truth of what happened on the Trashman. Only 2 people survived. Only 2 voices remain. Could there be more to the story? Something untold? Something darker? We may never know. But one thing is certain. When the ocean turns against you, there is nowhere to hide. And in those moments, when nature tests the very edges of the human soul, only the strongest survive. If this incredible survival story gave you chills, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss what's coming next, and trust me, the next story might just be even more unbelievable.